Hello and welcome to Balancing Act, Life and Struggles of a Teenage Girl, a mental health and wellness and semi-unfiltered podcast made for teens by a teen. I'm your host, Moorea, a 16-year-old girl from New York, and here on Balancing Act, I bring you weekly episodes featuring relatable conversations, personal stories, and practical insights to help you navigate life's balancing act and related challenges, and to remind you that you are not alone. So, if you're like me and you went through middle school or high school or maybe elementary school during COVID, your social stuff was kind of like a little weird for a little while, right? It's hard to talk to people, and especially coming out of COVID, like I was so socially awkward. And I was like living my life on my phone. My phone was my only connection to anything. And so this idea of like social media and phone usage and everything, it's just such like a pressing issue in the modern world. And all of our parents are like, get off of your phone. And you're like, but it's like my life, like this is how I communicate. This is what I do. And so this was just such an important conversation to have. So in this episode of Balancing Act, I am so excited to be joined by Kirsten McCormick. She is a super awesome person. And in addition to being a mom of 5, which is like a job in of itself, she's the founder of Teen Connect adventure camps, where teens go to like unplug and to actually interact with each other in the real world. And then in addition to running those camps and activities in her local community, she's a thought leader who works to help parents and teens navigate the difficult balance between technology and real-life connections and experiences, because balancing these things is really a challenge for anyone who lives in 2025. And so this conversation was just so meaningful to have. We talk a lot about like dynamics around phone usage and also about like the meaning and the value of unplugging. And I know this may seem like a conversation that like you'd have with your parent about like you gotta get off your phone, stop scrolling so much, blah blah blah, but like this was such a meaningful conversation to have, and it did not feel like that at all. And she really understands teenagers' perspectives and how we work, and I just felt so heard. And this episode offers some really great insights into how to better navigate phone usage with like your parents, and then just also finding that power within yourself to make a change. So yeah, let's dive into it. I'm so excited to have you on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I really, really appreciate the invitation.
Of course. By now, we've all heard adults in our lives tell us that we need to get off of our phones, go outside, touch some grass, and then social media is going to like result in the end of humanity or just something along those lines. So what do you believe the role of social media and technology is in our lives?
I think that technology and social media are tools. I think that if we say that they're all bad and if we demonize them, then we don't give them the place that they deserve, which is their powerful tool. For instance, you are able to use technology to share your message and to reach a lot of people that might be outside of your normal social circle. But I think we have to be reminded sometimes that they are tools. And like any tool, they have to be used for good. And that if they're not being used for good, they have the potential to be addictive or disruptive. And there's a lot of studies that have been shown that they do contribute towards anxiety and depression and stress. And it can be a difficult balance to navigate. How do we use these amazing tools, but not suffer harmful effects that many scientific studies have shown that especially teen girls, when it comes to social media, seem to experience the most anxiety and depression because of it.
Yeah, technology is so powerful. It's a tool and it allows people to connect. Then I've discussed social media on other episodes with people who've written dissertations on it and the effects that it's had. And it really shows the terrible effects that social media can have on people, but then it's just so hard to balance. So do you have any tips for how teenagers can
balance technology and also navigate like the relationship with their parents and the people who are trying to get them off of technology?
Sure. So I think when it comes to technology and their own relationship with technology, I think each of us as human beings, no matter what our age, need to decide like how we want to spend our life because we get to choose how we spend every single day. And it may not seem like 30 minutes or an hour or 2 hours is very much time. The average teenager, according to surveys, spends 7 hours a day online outside of school time. But let's just say it's only 2 hours. Over the course of a year, that's over 600 hours that we're spending not hanging out with friends, not doing awesome things like recording podcasts, not laughing, not reading, not writing, not engaging in our hobbies, like whatever those hobbies are. That's time that we basically lost. And so as individuals, we each have to decide like what our priorities are when we look back at our life. What do we want to remember doing? And how do we want to spend our time? And then make really conscious decisions about what we want to spend our time because ultimately our parents aren't going to be able like to control us forever. We get to choose right now what our habits are going to be. You get to decide right now what kind of life you want to live and what habits you want to form. And our parents each have an idea of what they think that should look like, but ultimately they don't control it. We do as individuals, whether we're teenagers or adults. And I think that a conversation that can be had with our parents is, I believe that one of the most powerful gifts that we can give ourselves or any other people we're in a relationship with, whether that's a parent, a boyfriend or girlfriend, a best friend, is the gift of being truly present with them. Because we all know what it's like to be hanging out with someone and they pull out their phone and you're like telling them something deep and important. They pull out their phone and they start checking a message or scrolling or something. And that feels very, oh, okay, I'll just stuff my heart back in my chest and hold on to that a minute while you check your messages. You like it feels dishonoring in a way. That's a very like serious word to use, but it just feels like you're not being respected when you're sharing something with someone or having a conversation and they pull out their phone. And so when we're talking to our parents, I think that we have the right to ask for the same thing from them. If parents would like their kids to be present, to put away their phone, to be spending less time on screens, I think the teenagers have the right to ask the same thing because ultimately we want and deserve to be present with the other human beings in our life. And parents don't have the right to ask their teenagers to put away their cell phones if they're not going to do the same thing. There has to be mutual accountability.
Yeah, definitely. But then a lot of parents also bring up the facts like if I didn't have to be on my phone, I wouldn't be on my phone and I'm only doing it for work purposes. And that way, like being on their phones is something that's necessary. And they're telling us that if we have the choice to not be on our phones, then we should not be on our phones.
I get that because I probably said the exact same thing to my teenage daughter. But earlier this year, I just realized the hypocrisy in that. And that, yes, I do have work I can do on my phone, but anybody who is letting their work interrupt their family dinner or interrupt a conversation with their child who should be the most important person in their life or one of the most important people in their life is not modeling good work-life balance. Say you're having a serious conversation with your partner and you pull out your phone. It's the same thing with your child or with your parent. Like we all as human beings deserve the respect and presence of the people we're with. And I think that while teenagers can't control their parents' behavior, I think that they can call them out on it in a respectful way. If you scream that at them, they're obviously not going to receive it as well as like, what I want most from you, mom, is that you just can be present with me. Is there any way that we can have mutual respect that at dinner time, if you don't want me to have my phone out at dinner, can you save your work messages or whatever it is you're doing? Can you save that and do it when we're not being present with each other? And I think if it's said like respectfully, that will actually really get parents in a way that they're like, oh, yeah, okay. Those are some of the things that a teenager can say to their parents that parents are reminded, like, wow, my kid's actually very wise.
Yeah. And I think it also means a lot to parents. I mean, I can't really speak from the perspective of a parent because I'm not a parent, but would you say that if your child was like, can you be more present with me because I want to be present with you and I value our time together? Like, isn't that something that a lot of parents would actually really appreciate?
Yeah, I think parents are going to hear it way more. If you're my teenage daughter and I say to you, like, get off your phone, you're always on your phone, it's not healthy for you, you should take advantage of the fact that you don't have to work. I scream that at you. Then the response that you're probably going to want to get back is, you're always on your phone and it's not fair. And why can't I be on my phone? And it starts a very aggressive tone in the conversation. Whereas if either one of those parties says, I just really want to be present with you, I just want us to be able to really talk, it's going to be received way better on either side if it's said, because I care about you, because I love you. And that's the only way to like really make it fair. And that also is modeling. I think parents model for their teenagers what healthy relationships look like. If I'm with my daughter and I'm on my phone the whole time, I'm basically teaching her that the important relationships, it's okay for people to treat her like that. It's okay if her friends or her boyfriend or other people that she cares about dismiss her and treat her like she's less important. That's the message I'm sending.
It's so complicated with phones and like the way that we use them and the message that it gives other people when we use the phone in front of them and just showing somebody their value by being fully present and how much that can mean to somebody. But the thing is, it's ultimately like our decision as individuals, how we're going to use our phone. And we have to make the decision for ourselves. Like you're saying, like, how are we going to use the phone as a tool in our lives and not let it become this other dangerous thing? We have the autonomy to choose that. And so I'm just wondering, what can we do to disconnect from our phones? How can we make the decision for us as individuals to choose to do something else instead of spending so much time online?
So I think the first step as individuals is to decide what things we do value, what things we do want to be spending time on, and then look at the opposite side, what things are taking me away from that. Our phones will even tell us in like the weekly screen time report, like where we spent the majority of our time. So if we look at that weekly screen time report and it's like, oh, wow, I spent 4 hours a day this week on Instagram. And we're like, I would have really liked to finish that homework project that was due, or maybe someone's really into art. Maybe they had an art project and they'd love to spend more time on art. They just never really give it the time it deserves, but they see they're spending 4 hours a day on Instagram. I think that different personalities need different things. Some people prefer to go cold turkey on things. So I'm going to delete it. I personally don't think that is sustainable. I think that's being like, I'll never eat chocolate again. I think that learning to have self-control and develop better habits is healthier. And so I think we can do things that will help us regulate and have self-control around these things. For some people, it might be deleting the app, but still giving themselves access to logging in through a web browser, for instance. I've had some teenagers tell me that having to go through that extra step because it's so automatic. We'll pick up our phone, get on an app and be scrolling and not even realize that we did it. Whereas if there's an extra step, even just taking it off of their homepage, so they have to search for it, having to go through an extra step, if someone's working on making a change, can be enough to trigger their brain to be like, oh, do I want to get on social media right now? Or do I want to do something else? I know that if their phones are connected to their teenager's account, parents also can put in some security and control. Most teenagers don't want their parents to be the ones deciding that for them. So that's why I think that being proactive about choosing for themselves how much time each of us can decide for ourselves, like how much time do I want to spend on social media? If someone was to ask you that, would you be like, I want to spend 4 hours a day or 7 hours a day? Most people probably wouldn't say that's how much time I want to spend, but they also don't want someone else limiting it. They want to decide for themselves and be autonomous. So I think we have to, as individuals, take whatever steps are going to work for us. For some people, they only get on like after they set themselves like a to-do list. Okay, I really want to work on my art project. So I'm not going to get on social media until I have worked on my art project for like an hour each day. Or for some people, it's instead of charging their phone by their bed, it's going and charging it like on the other side of the room so that they can't automatically reach for it. And that that is their particular place where, like, when they're feeling tired and lazy, they tend to reach for it. But ultimately, no one else can say for you, this is going to work. Each individual person has to know, what are my sort of like weak spots? When am I most likely to choose that over something that I know is going to nourish my soul and make me feel happier in the long run? Because in the long run, social media doesn't make any.
Yeah, we all know social media doesn't make you happy. I always feel bad after I'm scrolling. At one point, I deleted. I went cold turkey on like social media for a while. I deleted Instagram. That didn't work. I re-downloaded it about the next day. I had about 3 different screen time blockers on Instagram. So like the Apple one and then 2 other apps to block my screen. But then I end up just like going through it and being like, well, that's not working. And so I just feel like the more that I try to regulate Instagram and make it like this thing that you can't have, it just makes your brain want it more, I guess.
Yeah. I think that instead of going cold turkey, like choosing healthy limit is a healthier approach. Like some people will have one day a week that they'll go screen free, where they just won't use their screen one day a week. And I think something like that is healthier, or having a certain amount of time each day where then after that they don't, or getting certain things. And I think that's healthier because then you're not saying, oh, I can never be on it again. You're like, really, I can't wait till tomorrow, or I can't wait till after 7 p.m. or whatever. Like it's in baby steps. I think self-control is a muscle, and that when we never use it, we lose the ability to self-regulate. But whereas if we can do it in small increments, then we build our self-control muscle of, no, actually, I have a self-control. Like one girl I knew was like, in order to just not mindlessly scroll, she like wouldn't take her phone in the bathroom with her, which seemed like a little thing. But she's like, I end up being like in the bathroom for like 30 minutes when obviously I don't need to be in there that long for the things I need to do. And I was like, that's a really interesting idea. That was just her way of being like, I have control over myself. Yeah. Even if it didn't affect her overall usage that much, it was her way of exerting her own power over herself and not just being controlled by her desire to be on her phone.
Yeah, totally agree with that. I need to stop bringing my phone to the bathroom because then I spend half an hour too, just like in the bathroom on my phone, and it's not good. And then in addition to doing a lot of work around helping people manage their relationships with their screens, you also do a lot in terms of what happens when we get off our screens, helping people get off their screens with your Teen Connect adventure camps. And so I'm just wondering, can you share a little bit about what these camps are and the value that you've seen of disconnecting from screen and learning skills in person?
Yeah, so that's actually my preference. I tend to believe that all things in life, you can't just eliminate something that might be harmful. You have to replace it with something good. That's basically a universal human fact with any kind of habit. We don't want to have a void in our lives. So if we eliminate something bad, or if we're trying to change a habit, it's way healthier to replace it with something good. And so I find that for teenagers, ultimately would rather be hanging out with their friends. They would rather be developing skills. They would rather be contributing something good to the world, whether that is art or music or learning how to make things or building different kinds of projects. But as human beings, we tend to take path of least resistance. And sometimes it's just easier to grab our phone. And so what I do is I create programming for teens in my community where on a weekly basis, they have access to different kinds of fun experiences that they can do with their friends, different kinds of educational and social experiences. And then I create teen adventure camps where teens from all over can come together and we go out and we go hiking and boating and camping and we jump into waterfalls and we do rappelling and do lots of other different kinds of physical outdoor adventure experiences. And I find that it's only like the first day that teenagers even mention missing their phone. But because they're with a bunch of other teenagers who are also missing their phone, and then they're being so like emotionally connected to the people around them and to the fun things that they're doing that they end up not even missing it. And usually at the end of a week or two, they're like, I love it. I feel so much more happier and alive. And their mental and emotional health, they all report being way better than before they started. And so that brings me a lot of joy. And a lot of the teenagers that go through these experiences then report that their motivation to make changes in their everyday life to keep their mental and emotional health at a good high level is much higher than when it's done out of like guilt of like probably shouldn't be scrolling so much. Like the motivation to do something because we probably shouldn't, or I need to change, or like I want to do more with my life. Those are negative motivations. And as human beings, we're not motivated negatively long term. Those things aren't sustainable. But when we find something that we're passionate about doing or connecting with other people, those things are sustainable. So I think that the teenagers that tend to have the best mental and emotional health are ones who find activities that they can do, usually socially with friends, whether that's hiking or sports or arts or music or dinner or clubs, doing hands-on things. Those are the kids, the teenagers that are the happiest and end up reporting the best mental health is ones who are actually physically getting out and using their bodies and their minds and their social skills.
Yeah, no, I so agree with that. You can't just like say somebody stop using your phone, it's bad for you, and then expect them to just sit there and do nothing. Because as teenagers, and especially because we use social media so much, we're so used to being like stimulated. So if we just stop using our phones, now what are you going to do? Yeah. So we have to find something else to like fill that void that is created when we take away social media, because social media is not just, well, it's mindless scrolling for a lot of people as a way of like entertainment, really fast dopamine, quick dopamine. And then also it's like a form of connection. So how do we find those things in the real world so that we wouldn't also be feeling the negative effects of social media and actually be able to connect with people in real life?
Yeah. And I think that real life connection is also way more deeply satisfying. The kinds of connection that we have on social media are way shallower and constantly depending on likes and follows and how people are interacting with whatever content we may be putting out there. There's anxiety to constantly be producing something that people will accept rather than showing up in person and simply being with other people, which allows us to form connections that are not so fickle.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like on social media, if you want a lot of likes, then you have to try to be everything to everyone, but there's no way that you could be that while still being your authentic self if you're trying to conform to what other people want. But if it's like in person and you have like a few close friends and you can be completely yourself and they love you for who you are and you feel happy, fulfilled in being the authentic you, that can be so much more meaningful.
So much more meaningful. That reminds me, one of my favorite authors, Brene Brown, she talks about the difference between fitting in and belonging. And she's like, fitting in is changing ourselves to be what other people want us to be and showing up in a way that they can accept. Whereas belonging is just being like totally and authentically ourselves, no matter how weird or wacky or different or unique we are, and being completely loved and accepted exactly the way we are. It's in a way, fitting in and belonging are opposite. And social media requires us to fit in. Whereas being in person with our real friends, if they are truly our friends, that's belonging.
I totally agree with that. The best experiences I've had in my life, like in my freshman year of high school 2 years ago, I went on a backpacking trip to Utah and we didn't have our phones. There was like no cell service, even if we wanted to use our phones. And then we all were just like goofing around and having a really great fun time exploring canyons. And it was just such an amazing experience. And so, can you tell us a little bit about what motivated you to start this camp? Like, were there any personal experiences that you had that showed you the value of in-person connection?
Yeah. So during the pandemic, really saw my teenagers spending a lot more time online because there was no other way to connect with people. All of us, adults and teenagers alike, all basically online was the only way to connect with other human beings. And after the first year of that, I really saw their mental and emotional health just taking a hit. They just weren't themselves. It was like their caves were these dark rooms where they stared at glowing boxes all day. And I was like, this is not healthy. These aren't like the active, like vibrant people that I know. And so I decided that we needed to get out in person. And so in 2021, I formed a group in our community called Teen Connect. And I just put the word out and I was like, any teenagers that want to come, we're going to do outdoors, socially distanced activities, games, and get togethers. And all of the teens that came, it was interesting because it was like for a lot of people, it was like their first social activity where they were actually doing stuff in person and not just meeting up online. And so there was some nervousness, but also you could just see how much everyone craved being in each other's presence, just like being face to face with people. And so we just started meeting once a week and watching each of these individual teams just transform with just getting to have that in-person connection was a really beautiful thing. And it really made me realize how important that was. It wasn't just like, oh, wouldn't it be nice to hang out with friends? It was like, no, teenagers need for their social and emotional development, they need to be with each other. They need to be around people in real life. So we continued doing these activities. And over the course of the year, things became more and more normal and we were able to do a lot more things. And what I realized, even as school opened back up and people were doing everything in person again, is that we'd formed a really valuable community based on doing things in person. And so the group evolved and changed and we started doing other things. We started doing activities that maybe they wouldn't try out on their own. Let's go rock climbing. Let's go ice skating. Let's take a photography class. We just started offering different kinds of experiences that teens could try out different interests and gifts and skills. And I just watched the more teenagers do things in person, the more they try out things that maybe they haven't tried before, maybe things that they might fail at, like the risk of having to try things that there's a possibility of failure, I think is very confidence building. And that's exactly what teenagers should be doing. And if they're getting that in school, great. But I just wanted to offer it to go beyond what they're getting in the classroom and give them as many real world in-person experiences as possible. And the camps are just an extension of that. Rather than doing one activity, it takes it on steroids for a couple of weeks. Let's get out and completely get you out of your comfort zone, but with your friends and give you a lot of chances to build confidence in your sense of self.
That sounds like so much fun and so meaningful and honestly amazing. But the fact is, not everyone has the opportunity to join like an amazing group like this. So do you have any tips for a teenager who's maybe listening to this episode and is like, wow, that sounds amazing. I want to go out in the real world. I want to do real things. I want to interact with other teenagers. Then they don't have access to like camps like this. What can they do in their lives today to start finding other ways to fill their need for social connection and in-person skill building if they just don't have access to a ton of these resources?
I think that a lot of times teenagers will wait for resources to come to them. But if they realize that it's in their power or their responsibility, there are quite a lot of resources for teenagers to be able to plug in. I think that starting with the resources provided, there's so many resources provided through their schools and then through local programs, through sport library programs. There's even local adventure clubs, hiking clubs, things like that. And a lot of times it's a matter of asking and seeking it out because sometimes things aren't right in front of our face, but as soon as you start looking for it, you can find it. And I think a lot of teenagers wait. I think we mentioned before talking about taking the path of least resistance. And we as human beings tend to do that. But with a little bit of effort just to search, and teenagers are really good at using the internet, to search for what kind of volunteer opportunities are in my community, what kind of outdoor adventure or sports opportunities are available to me, because they do exist. There's a lot of really awesome things happening in communities across the United States.
Yeah. And I know that, at least for me as a teenager, like all these activities sound really fun and volunteering sounds really fun, but sometimes it's so scary to like go into a new space where you know absolutely nobody. And so, what have you seen in terms of, I guess, at your own camps where teenagers come in and they don't know anybody? How does that tend to go? Do they feel like really left out, or do people start to form bonds pretty fast?
In the case of the camps, everybody starts on the same playing field, right? Like everybody's coming and not knowing anyone. And so in that case, it's a little bit different because people tend to be able to bond quickly because it's not like they're entering in a place where there's pre-existing cliques. But a better example would be I do a lot of programming for teenagers locally. And every month or two, we have new teens that move here or find out about the group and decide to join. And I think one of the things that I've watched is that it's going to be awkward. Anytime you start something new, it's going to be awkward. And just acknowledging that and recognizing, like, okay, it's going to be awkward till it's not awkward. And so we'll even joke about that when we're doing the introductions. I remind the teens that are here and already part of the group, like, hey, remember your first time, how it was awkward till it wasn't awkward anymore? And I say that to the new teens as I'm welcoming them, like, it's probably going to feel a little awkward. You probably feel like everybody knows each other, but everybody here had their first time to come. Everybody had their first day or their first couple of weeks. And I said, just stick with it because it's worth it to get over that hump of being awkward. And you're not the only one that feels that way or has felt that way. Like everybody has to go through that sort of like what feels like a hazing phase of the awkwardness. And that's just part of being human. And it's worth it. It's so worth it to find that fun activity or fun group or a sense of belonging on the other side of the awkward. But we have to be willing to push through the awkward to get there.
I totally agree, and I myself definitely have experiences where I've had to like push through that awkward phase to like really connect with the group. So when like these teenagers come into a group and they connect, are there any stories that have really like stood out to you of how teenagers have changed through these programs and through connecting in person with other teenagers?
Yeah. One of my favorite examples is there was a young lady who started coming to some of our activities when she was 15. And when she first came, super, super, super shy, super awkward. I remember this is not a criticism on her style, but the way she dressed looked like she didn't want to be seen. Like she dressed in a way that was super baggy clothes. She wore her hair shaggy over her face, which she didn't look bad. It wasn't that, but it was almost like her energy was giving off a like, I'm here. I don't want to be seen. Don't notice me. And she came and I was really happy to have her there. And what I found with her is that she did better if she had like something she could help with or like a job. Like she had a naturally like very kind and giving spirit. And so as a facilitator, I noticed that and I like got her involved anytime we needed help, like running registration at the door or organizing things behind the scene or cleaning up afterwards, like giving her little jobs to do gave her a sense of importance. And it's been really beautiful to watch over the last few years as she's kept coming. She's really matured a lot and transformed. And she's very artistic. And so any of the activities for her that involved arts, crafting, anything creative, she really thrived at. And so when I knew there was going to be activities like that, I always made sure I was like, you need to come to this. This is going to be your thing. And so she just kept showing up. And that's what I think I'm most proud of her for is that she just kept showing up. Probably for like the first 4 or 5 months, she didn't talk to anyone, but she just kept showing up, kind of sitting in the corner, being a wallflower. And then bit by bit, she started to find her people. It started off with just sitting with the other wallflowers, but she found her people. She made friends. And now she's 19 and one of the group leaders. She has really found her place. She shows up. She helps with organizing things. She very frequently is running the registration table. She's welcoming the new younger kids, and she can relate to them better than anyone else. So when she sees someone new who's shy or awkward or just like, I don't know where I'm supposed to stand or who I'm supposed to talk to, she's so like gentle and warm and welcoming. She hasn't, when I say she's transformed, I don't mean she's become an extrovert, because she hasn't. But I've watched her really blossom, and now she can see those other shy, nervous, introverted kids, and she knows just how to like go sit next to them and ask them questions and make them feel really comfortable. And I think that's a really cool part about teen learning leadership, is that you don't have to be a natural born leader. It's taking your own experiences and then using that to see other people like you and be able to be empathic and be like, I know what that feels like. And how can I use my experience to help make the experience somewhat easier for someone else? And so that to me is what leadership is about. It's not being naturally like, hi, I'm here to be in charge. I'm here to boss people around. It's about being empathic and being like, how can I help? How can I use my experience to serve?
I totally agree with that, and that story is so beautiful. I just came back from, like, a conference in Denver. It was, like, a student leadership and diversity inclusion conference, and what I learned the most from it was, like, the importance of just helping other people to feel like they belong. And like you're saying, leadership is really having empathy for people, going out there and really connecting with them, so I just think that's so beautiful, and it really shows, like, the importance of also in-person connections, right? Because there's no way that you could develop a relationship like that online, or at least it'd be very hard to.
Yeah, it's hard online because you can't read people's body language. Even when you can see people's faces or hear them talk, that is something that is usually either planned or scripted or edited in a way that is not, I'm not saying it's not authentic, but it's not real and live and in the moment. And that's different than seeing someone across the room and being able to read their body language and to be like, okay, they feel uncomfortable or they feel shy or they feel embarrassed. And then being able to use our empathy to react and respond to that.
Completely agree. Like, there's such a human connection that's formed when you do things in person. So I love that so much. So if people want to reach out to you or learn more about the work that you do, where can they go?
We have a website. It's teenconnectedventures.com, or we're on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook at Teen Connected Ventures.
That's amazing. And then there's just one question that I like to ask everyone who comes on the podcast, which is, if you had one piece of advice for your teenage self, what do you think that would be?
Ooh, one piece of advice for my teenage self. Just to be kind, have grace with myself, because I think especially those of us who are hard workers and ambitious, we tend to judge ourselves really harshly and hold ourselves to high standards, which can be good and make us work harder, but it also can make us really beat ourselves up when we make mistakes. And I think that just having grace and being kind to ourselves, because that allows us to also have grace and be kind to other people.
I completely agree, and I love that so much. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. This has been really great.
Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you so much for making it to the end of this episode of Balancing Act. So, here are my key takeaways, because this was just such a meaningful conversation to be having. First of all, we need to define our relationship with technology autonomously. Like, we gotta do it by ourselves. Our parents can't do it for us, because the reality is, like, we're just, like, not gonna listen to them. Sorry, parents, if you're listening. But no, it has to come from us. We're teenagers finding our own way in the world, and we have to be the ones to figure out how we're gonna use our phones if there's gonna be any long-term change. And teenagers, we gotta find our own ways to regulate. And something that I've done is, on Apple now, you can, like, choose to hide apps and have to open them with, like, Face ID and whatever. And I've done that, and, like, I don't know if it's because, I just haven't really been on my phone as much for the past few days, but I haven't seen, like, Instagram. Like, it's still on my phone, right? But then it's not, I don't, like, see it when I open my phone, and so I don't use it. So, like, quick switch is, like, click on the app and then, like, click like Face ID and then hide, and then it hides the app, and it works really well for me at least. And the second thing, which I didn't really think about but made a lot of sense, was about just dynamics around phones and screens and what it means when you're using a screen instead of being present with other people. And then realizing that being present with other people is one of the greatest gifts that you can give somebody. And so just putting your phone away and really just being with other people in the moment can be so valuable. And then kind of adding on to that, real life connection is the most important thing. And it's really what we want and need as humans. And when you're in person, you can be so much more authentic, because online you have to be everything to everyone all at once. But when you're in person, it's so much easier just to be you when you're around a smaller group of people. And then when it comes to actively putting yourself in these situations, you gotta actively pursue these things. And it can be hard and it can be awkward, but you just gotta push through it. Like, fake it till you make it. Put on a smile, act confident, because what I've noticed is that a lot of the times people around you feel just as awkward and weird as you do when it comes to like new social situations. And so just like put yourself out there and realize that you're not the only one who feels awkward, and that it can be so rewarding when you push through and just start to have fun with the people around you in your life. And so yeah, thanks for tuning into this episode. Go out there into the real world, call your friend, ask them to hang out in person, and I'll see you next week. Thanks for listening to this episode of Balancing Act: Life and Struggles of a Teenage Girl. If this episode resonated with you, or if you know someone it could help, please feel free to share it with your loved ones or on social media. You can find us on our Instagram at balancingact.podcast and on our website balancingact.life. So please consider checking those out and giving our Instagram a follow. If you want to support the podcast, please consider subscribing to the podcast or leaving us a hopefully good rating on whatever platform you're listening to this on, because that would really be invaluable. If you have any questions or comments about this episode, or if you want to suggest a topic or person for a future episode, please reach out to us through social media, our website, or email, which you can find linked below. Thanks again for taking the time to listen. I hope you have an amazing rest of your day, and remember, life's a balancing act, and sometimes you're gonna fall on your face, but you're not alone.